Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And this week, we're going to tackle topics like getting deleted out of your ex's life, diagnosing love bombing from a distance, and trying to heal from a perfect breakup.
Oh, yuck.
Right? But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners. Also, we're recording in the same room together for the first time in
out.
I don't even know how many months/years. And we don't know how to handle this.
I'm making direct eye contact with you. It's making me so uncomfortable.
There's also no delay either. Our voices are perfectly in time with each other.
So,
and we're also both using our podcast voices, which is just a little different.
We have a podcast voice, or
a
perform, a.
We talk, we enunciate more. I feel like when we're just together, we're just kind of and when we put mics in front of us, we're hello, everyone.
Yes, and it's so weird. Okay, so this episode's going to come out a little bit later, but we did the live show last night. So thank you. I know this is very delayed, but thank you to everybody who attended both in person and virtually. Thank you to Amsterdam, the venue. Thank you to Moment, who orchestrated our virtual experience. Mm-hmm. And thank you to Spencer, who made that all happen. But so that's why we are together right now. But we were just saying that it feels almost weirder to be in the same room than it does to be
in front of a big audience.
Yes, totally. Because now I just feel like we're performing for each other. Anyway, this is all to say, Sam and I are not professionals. We're bugging out today.
Yeah.
So please, definitely this time, take your advice as you see fit. We're only here to offer our humble musings, hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs on the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love. All right, this week's check-in topic is actually inspired by some personal musings that I had this past week about... so I had a life experience that triggered some wounds in me, and I sound like a fucking... I sound like...
Once again, Sierra has been triggered by a life experience.
And she's talking about her wounds, her youth wounds.
Her generational wounds.
Yes, here for this season of my life is just fucking using those 2-cent Instagram words. Well, they're not. They were originally real therapy words, and then capitalism.
That's right. We just took them and ran with them.
Yeah, totally. Especially us unaccredited people.
Yes.
Anyway, so I had some feelings brought up recently by a life experience that made me really reflect on my deep-seated desire to be liked and to be loved and wanted. And also this is not limited to one gender identity, but for me and my experience, my desire to be wanted and appreciated as a woman, physically and sexually, and how I feel like I owe prettiness to the world in a fucked up way,
Sure.
in a socially conditioned way. And like I said, this is not an experience limited to one gender identity, but it made me reflect on my experience as a young girl watching representation in the media of desire, even and relationships, even in children's cartoons. You know, we joke about how damaging Disney movies are, even though I love the classics. I loved them as a little kid.
Sure.
But it was making me think about how I was why do I feel like one of my core purposes here on earth is to prove my worthiness and my prettiness or something. Why do I have that wound in me that wants to be affirmed or whatever? And I was thinking about Aladdin, one of my favorite movies from when I was little. Obviously has not totally stood up to the test of time.
Sure, yep.
Fully. But when you're little, just thinking about the representation that teaches us how to love and be loved and want and be wanted in our adulthood. Watching Aladdin, all I remember focusing on or internalizing, I guess I should say, is how Jasmine was so beautiful and how her beauty was a part of the storyline, and Aladdin's like desire for her was a part of the storyline. And there's different music when she enters the room, and that sort of beauty and lust is this undercurrent of her character, which is always in contrast to this main charismatic, capable, brave character that wasn't the girl. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And again, making all the jokes about me talking about generational trauma. But like I have just been thinking about where is this stuff in me coming from? Really like pulling out those threads specifically. And I just wanted to bring this to the Just Breakup table of like, so much of what we do is culturally, socially conditioned in us. And it's out of our control, even though like, are we really free beings? Do we really have autonomy? Am I choosing how much of what I'm doing is my choice or is my conditioning?
Ooh, that's really real.
I know. Sorry to like start this chicken topic with such a heavy thing that has like very little to do with relationships, but everything to do with relationships. Yeah, I don't know. What can you say about all of that? And or can you pull on any of those threads of what you saw in representation when you were younger and how it's manifested now in your behavior? Because just to finish one thought, like I think I finally challenged the idea in me that like a lot of my instincts aren't natural to me. They were just what I saw of girls and womanhood, specifically for my experience.
For sure.
Of that we are not the main characters, we are the love interests. And I know that's so simple, like we know that, but also really just feeling that physically and feeling the physical ramifications of it in my fucking 30s, decades past since I loved those movies,
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me watching those movies, I never saw myself as either of those two things either, right? Because as like somebody who was socialized as a boy who probably didn't know at the time, but was obviously queer. Right. Like I would look at Aladdin and be like, I am attracted to that.
Yes, totally.
Right? Like, but I don't identify with it.
Yes, totally.
Right? Because he is currently going after this woman, and also like he is presenting a type of masculinity that doesn't feel like mine, right? Doesn't feel like authentic to me. And like part of what has been really wild over the course of the last few years is there's been like more representation around queer characters in storylines that are sort of like adjacent to Disney.
Yes, totally.
Has been like the upswell of like emotion and longing and like desire that I feel when I watch things like what's that one that everyone freaked out about because
Buzz.
They all had like they all had existential crises about the two little gay boys in England.
Oh, Heartstoppers.
Heartstoppers, right? When I saw Heartstoppers and was like, oh my God, this is like the emotion that came up in me of like,
it was so good.
Is this what other young people were feeling watching shit like Aladdin, right? Because like this thing is so deeply unfamiliar to me. This feeling of like desire and longing for the beauty of that relationship, or like the simple love that they felt for each other, right? Like. Or that podcast that I listened to that was like Two Princes.
Yes.
And like that same moment where I was just like, oh my God, like just like this is not an emotion that I experience very often. And I also wonder too, like, because I never saw myself in those things, whether or not that has affected my approach to relationships too, right? Like y'all make fun of me all the time because I'm so like pragmatic about relationships, but that's because like, I didn't know what it felt like to understand that love and desire could exist until I was like 17 years old and finally met another boy who was like into me. Wow. Right? And then it was like all of this shit came up. But before that, it was like I identified more with Cogsworth than I did with like Beauty or the Beast, right? Like I identified more with Ursula than I did with Ariel or Eric. And I had deep attraction for Eric for sure. Right. But I wasn't part of that story because there was no one there was no
part
one
of
like
that
me.
world, maybe.
Exactly, right?
Sorry.
Right? Like I was much more interested in like what Sebastian was up to in that movie than I was about what Ariel and Eric were, because it was like this, I'm just like trying to claw my way into sort of where I would fit in this universe.
Yes.
And it has to be like the persnickety like person over here. Or like in Aladdin, like I don't even know who I would be.
I don't know.
Right?
Yes,
like
totally.
Abu. Like actually, I probably identified more with Jafar because Jafar is camp, right?
Yes, totally.
Like the villain who's like just trying to like figure like you know, also like wearing a lot of gowns, like big hats, like has a big staff, like absolutely. And like what does it mean for me growing up? And the idea of like I am much more like. I identify with these people who are either villains or like the friction in the story, like the thing that's trying to prevent the people from getting together, right?
Totally.
Like, and it makes sense to me that that's like why my approach to relationships is so pragmatic, because it's like what I've been doing my whole life is watching other people get into relationships and do stupid things in those relationships and then be like, well, you know, there's a whole castle to run over here.
Right.
Like, I know who's going to do it.
Here. Yes, totally. Well, what we're talking about is like how wounding the poor representation is, because you to take your like structure right there. I grew up watching characters, feminine characters, be wanted and upheld for their desirability. Yep. And then so me non-pragmatically would just be like, want me, desire me, let me get this affirmed, or like my value is how much other people see me as beautiful, not smart, intelligent, powerful, capable, or even of agency to say like, I am not a thing to be desired. I'm an actor in this story or whatever.
For sure.
And it's just so damning. It's so damaging. And it's just so funny how these simple cartoons have manifested in our understanding of our worthiness, deservability, lovability. I mean,
for sure.
We joke about Disney and we joke about like rom-coms sucking. And also they are the scripts, they are the playbooks that we use to say, you know, stories for eons. We use stories to identify ourselves with. And if representation is limited, no wonder why we like limit the stories about ourselves or tell ourselves damaging stories about ourselves.
For sure. Absolutely.
Anyway, so that was a big check-in topic. I feel like we could honestly, I'd love to keep, I should have saved this for a Patreon, honestly, because we could have kept talking, because you brought up a ton of great things. Anyway, so maybe we'll continue this conversation on Patreon.
Oh, for sure. And it ties to that show that I recommended last week. I think that was when I did it. Queer for Fear, because what I like about that show is that like there are all these horror movies and they sort of tie all of these different like monsters to like queer experiences. Yes, totally. And it's like, it helps me be like, oh, no wonder I feel so like apart from the world, right? Or no wonder I'm so drawn to these types of things, because there were only certain representations of people who looked like me, or people who had attractions or like identities like mine. And they were almost always the villains,
yes,
right?
Totally.
Like they were almost always the person who was causing trouble. So I really appreciate the sort of discourse that we're developing around this, and which is like all to say that like I don't hate Disney movies, right? Like I love them, love the music, like love all of the parts of it, but it is about like what are the ideas that we're continuing to reiterate for people over and over again.
And people making a fuss about like gay characters or, you know, like why put sexuality in children's shows or whatever.
It's like
it's already there. It's already there. It's already prevalent with like desire politics and identity politics and the things that are unsaid or uncoded or unrepresented.
Right. And I mean, it ties back to compulsory heterosexuality and also compulsory sexuality too, right? Like which of the Disney characters when we were growing up were ever not interested in a romantic or sexual relationship with another person.
You and I were talking about fucking Game of Thrones the other day. I am re-listening to the audiobooks for like the 80th time. And I'm so, if y'all watch the show, I am so mad that Arya had sex in the last season.
Yeah.
Because I liked Arya as this like gender fluid, non-sexual being. Like
sure.
This check-in topic needs to be wrapped up. This check-in topic needs to be a Patreon episode. So if you like this conversation, subscribe to our Patreon. But like, I loved the representation of this like powerful gender fluid, because she kept like changing faces and change. You know, in the book, she was like all identified as all these different like gendered characters. And a lot of people were like, oh, I loved that she had like this sexual agency and like went off and fucked this character. But like, sure, I love that for her. But I loved the moment that her character, her sexless character had created up until then. And it kind of like lost that representation for me.
For sure.
I'm sorry. That was like a bizarre aside, and we probably should get into the letters. All right, y'all. That's the check-in topic. Let's get into this week's letters, and thanks for your discourse.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's do it. So our first letter comes from Cara Anonymous, whose pronouns are she, her, who's writing from New Jersey. Dear Sam and Sierra, my ex and I were together for 6 years and broke up 2 years ago. It was mutual, and we ended with respect. We've gotten lunch and coffee. It's like, been spending too much time with Sierra this week.
Hey!
We've gotten lunch and coffee around a dozen times in the past 2 years, and we have seen each other at mutual friends' parties and weddings, or just running into each other around the city. Big picture of our relationship, I was really grateful to learn how to find and learn to love another person, but I definitely get sad that I lost a friend and a close person in my life. I'm writing because I know that we weren't great for each other and we weren't compatible for the long term. But I recently clicked on my ex's Instagram profile and saw that he deleted every single picture of us. And it hit me like a sack of bricks. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really post on social media, so I know the last pictures he posted were 3+ years ago and were of us when we were together. I guess I understand if he's dating and doesn't want his most recent photos to be of his ex. But it made me really sad and hurt, like he was deleting me out of his life. Why the heck does this hurt so much? Any advice on how to take this less personally? Lots of love and gratitude for you two, Spencer, and your partners for sharing y'all with the world.
Aww.
XOX, Kara.
Kara, thank you so much for writing and trusting us with this letter. I just want to start off by saying this pain that you felt, like that sack of bricks that was dumped on you when you saw that. Yeah, that is real. It's okay to have like a physical, emotional reaction to that, even though you understand why you broke up, even though it was like a healthy separation, and that you've been able to be cordial post breakup. I think it's totally human to take, no matter how logically you can understand it.
Right. It's
totally human to kind of like have your feelings feel a little tender.
For sure.
To feel a little tender after you feel like you were quote unquote erased from somebody's life.
Yeah, absolutely. It can make total sense why he's doing this and also hurt your feelings.
Yes,
right?
Totally.
And you're not being petty or ridiculous for feeling hurt by it, even as you're like, and I know that it's not a bad or mean thing that he's doing, right? Like, I know that he's probably doing this because he doesn't post much and he doesn't want pictures of me as like his last photo. Like, and also that hurts, right? Like both of those things can be true at the same time.
Beautiful. Now, I don't want to talk about a future in which you would delete Peter from your deleted Instagram. But historically, have you done something similar? Or did you ever post significant others?
I did, but I very rarely posted them in like a romantic way, right? Like it would be like a picture of us together, like doing something. And it's like, I'm posting this picture because of the thing that we're doing and not because of the person. But I think especially if it was like, there were a whole bunch of photos of like me and my ex, and then I was trying to date again, I would definitely think about like, how do I curate my Instagram to not be like, hey, I've spent 6 years in a relationship with this person, and I have, like, especially if he doesn't post much, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
And it's like literally the last picture is the ex. Like, I totally understand and would consider doing something like that. But I think it ties to this whole thing around social media still, right? Like,
yes, 100%.
And how how new social media still is around how relationships function.
Right.
You know, and like we still haven't figured it out, and it's still constantly evolving. And so again, like before social media, if your ex took a picture of you out of their
wallet.
Yeah, right? Like you wouldn't know.
Yes, totally.
Right? And they wouldn't necessarily have to be that concerned about it because it's not like any person that they meet is immediately going to go through their wallet or like go to their home and like look at all their picture frames.
Yes,
right?
Our social medias are so conflated with our identities.
Right, and they're not. They're such a small sliver.
We gotta just
of
pause
ourselves.
for a second. Isn't that wild that like we really do feel that way, that they are wholly, holistically representative of us, so closely tied to our identities, you know?
Well, it's because we've all made ourselves brands, right?
Yes.
Right?
Wow.
And so like the thing we present on social media is who we are.
I hate that because that's what I'm dealing with right now. Like I want to delete my Instagram, but I've got a new book coming out. We have our podcast. Right. I like posting pictures, but also I feel like it's tied too much to my identity, and I don't know how to break those ties, especially because I have these professional aspects of using social media. That's neither here nor there, but I'm so glad.
That's part of why I deleted my Instagram, because first of all, because I was doing too much scrolling, but also because I was like, me being on Instagram doesn't feel authentic to myself. And it's also the way that these, however many people who follow me know me exclusively.
Yeah,
right?
exclusively.
Like,
wow.
Right. And it's like, this isn't.
Well, that's a great reminder that social media, we conflate it with whole identities. Mm-hmm. It is a sliver of an identity. It is a shell. It is a layer. And bringing this to breakups, I mean, one, him deleting you, no matter how amicable the breakup or like how healed we are or how far the breakup was in the past, like deleting pictures can be a part of the healing process. Mm-hmm. I'm definitely like a cannot see, don't want to feel,
yes,
see, deal, heal.
Put that in a box. Put that box inside of another box.
And then burn those boxes. And also, like Sam said, because social media is not as real as we think it is, this is also not indicative of your place in his life. You know, this is not symbolic of your time, energy spent, love given being erased. You know, just because it is a literal delete button doesn't mean he is like eternal sunshining you.
For sure. And it doesn't even mean that he like won't talk to you or talk about you to other people, right? Like,
wow.
Right. He may go on a date and talk about the trip he went on with his ex, right? Mm-hmm. Like, or, and again, because social media is such a sliver of that, it feels like, oh, I've been deleted from his life, but he has a whole lot of other options for how, and what's wonderful about that is that he gets to make choices about how he brings up you and the time that you had together in a way that hopefully is going to be really healing, helpful, nutritious for him. And because we are so focused on social media, we might forget that fact, right?
Yes.
We might forget the fact that you're probably really actually very integrated into his understanding of himself, integrated into his understanding of where his life has brought him. And just because we don't see that doesn't mean that it's true.
Wow.
And we're not entitled to see that either, right? Especially with folks that we have chosen to not have in our lives anymore, right? Like we don't necessarily deserve to be the first thing that people see about the people that we have been around, right? Or we've been integrated with.
Yes. And here's a great opportunity to remind everyone that there is not a right or wrong way to keep your ex on social media. You, listener, somebody out there might think, I would never put an ex on my social media, keep an ex on that is inappropriate. It sends the wrong message. And then I know other people who say, I feel like my social media is my diary and I don't want to delete anything because it shows me like how far I've been. I, on the other hand, I'm like, archive, delete, don't want to see this, embarrassed of that, you know? And that's my style. And, you know, to the letter writer, like your ex, he might have one style and you might have another. And I know this is hard, but I feel like Sam's most recent point really like summarizes it or gets to the core of it, that like you are simultaneously always a part of his story. And also, you know, it is his journey. It is his life. And he gets to choose how he includes his history in his life moving forward.
For sure. And you get to feel whatever way you want to feel about it, right?
Oh, I love that.
You get to be hurt by that. You get to be thankful for that. You get to be excited by it. Like all of those things are yours, right? Those are the things that are available to you. And so you're not being ridiculous for feeling a type of way about this. And I think that you are capable of holding both of those things for yourself in this moment.
Absolutely. My darling, we love you so much.
Thank you so much for writing.
We hope this helps. All right, our next letter is from Scared Friend, whose pronouns are she, her, who's writing to us from the void. Hi, Sam and Sierra. I moved to a new city 19 months ago, and making friends has been a slow, painful process. However, there's one friendship I value above all others because she, 28-year-old female, has reciprocated the same energy and effort that I have put in. She's the kind of friend that I would say, quote, feeds my soul. We are able to have deep, emotionally sound conversations, and we value each other's perspectives. Even in this short time of knowing each other, we've both been dumped and supported each other through heartbreak and are now navigating this tough world of singledom together. She has recently begun to date a new man, 29-year-old male, and I have massive alarm bells going off. I previously dated abusive and toxic partners and can now identify red flags much sooner and with greater clarity. My friend, while emotionally mature, has not experienced this type of relationship and is naive to the nuanced ways of emotional abuse and how it starts. She tends to be more avoidantly attached and noted that one of the things she needs to work on is how she self-sabotages a good thing. Given this recent realization in her life, she is trying to, quote, lean into partners that hold space for her. As her friend, I want her to feel seen, heard, valued by her partner, but this man's tendencies are more of the love bombing variety, in my humble opinion. They have been dating for 2 months, and these are a few things that he's done. On their second date, he gave her a flannel with his cologne sprayed all over it since he was leaving town for 2 weeks. He will take random candid photos of her throughout their dates together and then send them to her while they are apart, saying things like, miss this day and you, heart emoji. He specifically created an album on his phone of said photos, and the title of the album is her name with a heart eye emoji. He made his phone lock screen her. He bought her a keychain with a song that he deemed their song etched into it. He consistently refers to her as his girlfriend, even though in private she told him that she's not ready for that title yet. He posted several photos of her on his Instagram feed with the caption, you may not be perfect, but you are perfect to me. And 2 days ago, he said, I love you. So that's the past 2 months. I have tried to talk to her about these actions on several occasions, noting that it feels more obsessive than genuine. And while she agreed that some of the actions have made her feel a little uncomfortable, she ultimately justified the behavior by noting that it's nice to feel wanted and, quote, this is how he feels love. Her saying that showed me that she does not quite understand how subtly manipulative these types of men are. Maybe I'm overreacting, and maybe this past trauma of toxic exes are clouding my judgment, but this just doesn't feel right. I'm scared that if she were to end things, he might stalk her or retaliate against her. I even asked her what she thought he'd do if she ended things, and she said, quote, lose it. It's early on, so he hasn't escalated, but I don't want to have to wait around until he does. I don't want this man in her life, but I'm very aware that she needs to live her own life, and I'm limited to what I can say and do. I want to and will continue to support her, but I'm also feeling stuck because when we've talked about their relationship, I've been honest in that it makes me worried. I can tell that she's slowly beginning to not tell me as much and being more private with their relationship, which is the exact opposite of what I want. Do you have any advice for being a scared friend?
Yeah, scared friend. I totally understand that this is a challenging position to be in.
Triggering, for sure.
Where you're sort of looking at your friend's relationship and seeing things maybe from an outsider's perspective that strike you as being unhealthy, and then feeling like you want to take care of them, and also you have no control over them.
Yes,
right?
totally.
Like the terrible reality that we sit in around like we just wish we could protect all of our loved ones all the time, and also recognize that like they're people who get to make their own decisions about their lives,
and
that's
the
hard.
terrifying reality that like the rules that we have accrued in our lifetime that we hope will protect us, like the systems of operation that we've learned from our own experiences that we now move through the world with, that those systems are different for each person. Like, I wish I could tell you, scared friend, that this man is definitely love bombing and is going to be controlling and is going to escalate.
Right. And here's the phone number to call to like get her extracted from this relationship
totally.
immediately.
And that we're sure of this. I wish I could tell you that your instincts will protect your friend and will protect you, right? And unfortunately, I'm not sure of that. Like from where we're sitting, we can't assume that. The examples that you gave, like, sure, some of them would probably be moving fast for Sam.
Absolutely, yep.
Some of them would not be moving fast for me, I don't see them as these sure red flags that you see them with. And I mean all of this with love and nuance. Like this is, I feel for you because it's so hard to be stuck, to feel stuck, to want to protect your friends, to feel this like ominous thing in the periphery you're afraid is going to happen. That's so stressful. And I too have seen my friends go into social situations in which I'm afraid for them because I'm convinced it's going to turn into something.
For sure.
But from our perspective, as outsiders, like we don't. You brought up the example of like this escalating to him stalking or something like that. And I don't know, because we're outsiders, I'm like, we just can't make that logical jump. Or how about this? If we do, we might be wrong, which would be fine. It's fine to be wrong. It's fine to be prepared for something wrong. But also our preparedness doesn't always protect us.
Exactly.
And then this, scared friend, like this, a lot of this is coming from your past behavior, and that past behavior, your trauma, in your body has been like, okay, so this is what happened, and this is how I'm going to protect myself in the future. I'm going to look for these red flags. I'm going to know them. I'm going to name them. They're going to be the same all of the time. I have this categorization system that's going to keep me safe.
For sure.
And that is so understandable. That's so reasonable. And also that system inside you is not going to be able to be applied to all other people and other people's lives. As you said, this. The core of this letter is saying like, I'm afraid my friend's going to get hurt and I can't live her life for her,
Yep.
And there's tension there. That's difficult to hold.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it would be helpful to really interrogate for yourself where this impulse to fix the situation is coming from too, right? Like this impulse to be like, okay, it's my job to get her out of this situation. And
because she's naive.
Right. Because she's naive because I know better. And to ask yourself, like, where is that impulse coming from and what are you trying to do with it? Like, because so often for me, that impulse to like fix other people or fix something is coming from my discomfort with the fact that stuff is out of my control, or my discomfort with the idea that someone I love so much could be hurt by someone.
Yes.
Right. And the reality is that everyone that we love deeply can be hurt by other people.
Yeah.
And that sucks, right? Like that's a shitty place to be in. And the only thing that we can do in that is to continue to love and support our people and find ways to navigate through what happens when our loved ones are inevitably hurt by other people.
I'm so reminded of a time in my life, pre-podcast, when I was a full-time writer. I ran a summer camp for high school poets. And during that time, I became really really close with so many of my students and really invested in their lives. And because I was like their poetry camp counselor, I knew like intimate details of their life more than I think like a teacher would. And so often I really wanted, I felt this sense of anxiety when I saw them going down certain paths. I was so afraid for them. I was so anxious for them to get into obsessive relationships or to get into unhealthy relationships or to be physically hurt or get themselves into situations in which they couldn't consent or, I just want to say this to our letter writers. It is physically and emotionally exhausting to care for people so much in the way that you internalize it and in the way that's happening here. Like, it wears on you. And why it wears on you so much is because, as Sam said, like, it is impossible. It is impossible to prevent other people, to keep them from getting hurt, and also to what I had to learn as a mentor and as a teacher is that I can do my best to share my lived experiences with other people, but sometimes they just have to walk that path themselves.
For sure.
And I can literally verbatim say, this is the lesson I learned. This is why I learned it, how I learned it. This is how I felt. And this is how I've utilized this lesson in my life moving forward. This is what I wish I did before learning this lesson. I can articulate that lesson perfectly. And some people still cannot hear it until they experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also assumes that there's one size fits all rules for everything,
those
right?
systems,
and that everyone's having the same experience and that every relationship looks the same and that there's sort of like this universal standard for how people should behave in relationships. And that doesn't actually fit, right? The things that you describe in this letter would be massive turnoffs for me.
I want to, just for fun, just because it's such a specific and probably polarizing list, I want to go through the list. Is that cool? Okay. I'm so glad you brought it up. Here we go. On their second date, he gave her a flannel with his cologne sprayed on it since he was leaving for 2 weeks. Second date.
No.
Honestly, this is one of the ones that I was like, really?
No.
But okay, from an anxiously attached
I think
person,
it would be cute if somebody was like sent me a picture of themselves and said like,
I really miss you.
Or like, we're just like, here, this is for, you can look at me while, like in like a funny, like, haha, like, wouldn't this be cute so that you don't forget what I look like or something.
Yeah.
Like, that's funny. That's cute. But like physical flannel with the cologne.
Yeah,
it's like, what if I don't like your cologne?
Yeah, I know. But
also,
maybe she was like, I really like the way you smell.
Exactly. Or maybe they were on that date and she was like, I really love this flannel. Or maybe he like gave it to her to wear because it was cold.
And maybe he didn't intentionally spray the cologne on it. Maybe it just literally smelled like it because he wore it.
For sure. Right. And said, here, why don't you keep this while I'm gone for 2 weeks?
And also, to be honest, like little anxious Sierra, if I started dating somebody that I really liked and I was going out of town, that would be like, I would be nervous.
Oh my God, yes.
Right?
So many of me and my friends have started dating someone that we really liked and then they have to like go somewhere for like 4 weeks. Right. And you're like, what if they never return?
Yes,
and what if it's weird when they come back? Right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, he'll take random candid photos of her throughout their dates and send them photos when they're apart.
That's not weird to me.
That's not weird to me, and I would love that because I'm vain.
I think that's actually right. Like, I think what's happening here is that like you're assuming that there is like a manipulation happening here, which there very well could be.
Yeah, we're not done with the list yet.
Right, but it also could just look like I'm taking pictures on the date, and then I take
pictures of my wife still. To be honest, like when we're out.
Yeah.
At a restaurant, I'll just like
take pictures of my cats and I show them those pictures all the time.
Specifically created an album in his phone. I did that with Willow. And I did that with Willow when we were probably dating for like 2 weeks and I did that with Willow. Well, we were long distance and I was obsessed with her.
I'm just kidding.
I was obsessed with her. So maybe that's not really like the right way to end this letter. Phone lock screen, not weird for me.
After 2 months, it's weird for me, but I also don't even have Peter or my cats or anyone as my lock screen.
Yeah, and I also want to say
it's aesthetic thing.
This is why I wanted to go through all of these, is because it's fun, because they're very specific. Thank you for being so specific. And also to illustrate that Sam and I have different opinions on this. We have different opinions from each other. We're going to have different opinions. Like, we want our listeners thinking like, how does this make me feel?
Yes, how does this make me feel?
Right, exactly. Yep. He bought a keychain. This one, honestly, probably is my least favorite because I was like, who has songs anymore? I mean, I do, but we're just so judgmental. He bought a keychain with a song that he deemed their song etched on it. Did he get it etched? Did he go to a mall, what are they called? I want to say Costco, but that's
a kiosk.
There we go.
Did he go to a mall Costco?
And then what's really funny is a Costco and a kiosk are like the opposite thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Costco is like
a really tiny
massive,
store.
yeah.
And
Maybe he went to Costco and got it etched.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm sure they do that. They do everything.
That I just think is cheesy. So like,
yeah, for sure.
He consistently refers to her as a girlfriend, even though she said she's not ready for that title yet. Me.
I don't like that, but
I don't like that either.
I think it doesn't feel consensual, you know?
Well, it
and
doesn't.
If like somebody's being like, I'm not comfortable with that, don't do that.
Yeah, and now the letter writer's like, yeah, duh, he's being controlling and he's taking these assumptions,
For sure.
And we don't know.
Which may be true.
Yes, we totally. It may be true, my darling letter writer, and you still, it's going to be her choices.
Yep.
Yeah. Post photos of her on Instagram with the captions, "You may not be perfect, but you're perfect to me." That I hate because it's cliche.
It's really cliche. And also, yeah.
I know.
It's
so
like
weird.
it's like a kind of a dig, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
I was just going to say, it's so weird to be like, you may not be perfect. You're not perfect.
Yeah.
But I'll accept you and think that you're perfect myself.
For sure. Which to be fair to the letter writer is.
But I honestly think
of,
this person is just like finding captions on the internet, and this is not like a
like
weird, subtle control tactic.
It is negging, right? Like that is what negging looks like.
All right, last one. 2 days ago, he said, "I love you." 2 months in, Sam?
Absolutely not. But that is me.
But is it love bombing? Well, we don't know. We have no idea.
2 months? I mean, that's a...
No, for me, love bombing... Well, no. I don't.
Love bombing is like, I'm going to marry you on the second date.
Which people have fucking said to me.
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
You know who?
People don't say that to me because they know that if they tried that shit, I would be like, goodbye. Strongly disagree.
Peter's like go home being like, yeah, strongly disagree.
That's right. That's why I didn't ask him on a second date till 6 months later.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, scared friend. If you take anything from this, I hope you feel heard and like that these fears we're hearing these fears. We're saying we understand why you feel this way. And also like there is a wound in you saying protect her because I wasn't protected.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I just want to say like, I see that wound, I see that fear and that anxiety. And I know how difficult it is to carry it around. And also, your friend is going to figure it out in a messy, wonderful, surprising, and unknown way to you,
sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Last little piece of advice, to the note where you said that she is starting to withhold from you. For me, now is an opportunity for you to say, like, I relinquish control and I relinquish judgment on my friend. Mm-hmm. Because I will never truly know what it's like to be in her body and in her experiences. And so I'm going to just enter this friendship with curiosity and openness. And so the next time you see her, be like, how's it going with so-and-so? Mm-hmm. Awesome, cool. Like, I guess I have had historically to practice what it feels like to just trust that my friend might not know my experiences, but they are doing the best that they can in their experiences with their knowledge, and like letting go a little bit of that control,
for sure,
or that sense that I need to teach them something.
Yes. I think that leaning into curiosity here can be really helpful to ask, how are things going? And then if she tells you this kind of stuff, ask, how is that feeling for you? Or
not. Be like, oh, cool. Do you know what I mean? Like, I only say that you're totally right. Like that is a natural conversation. That's a great way to ask to check in on the health of the relationship, like use that script. But why I'm pushing on that a little is because the letter writer talked about how she's already like withholding. So I'm interested in making sure that relationship is nurtured as a space where that friend feels like she can come to you.
Yep.
So like I wouldn't push.
But I also don't want it to be like a situation where she has to continually say, oh, cool. And then the friend is like, yeah, and I have to keep proving that things are cool. You know what I mean? Like if she's in a bad situation and has to like, because, you know, when you're in that situation with that horrible person that you're dating and you're like, I put so much time into trying to convince this person that everything is really cool. But I think if you can foster a place of like, we're not judging, but I'm going to keep checking in on how you're experiencing this.
How do you foster that? Yeah, that's beautiful.
Because then and I think that this is a practice that I've been trying to do with lots of people in lots of situations, not even people that I'm concerned about, is that not assuming that what they are experiencing is what I would experience in that situation, right? And so instead of saying, and if somebody comes up to me and says like, oh, I just went to Orlando, instead of being like, oh, cool, how was it? Like, that's awesome. I'll instead be like, how was that for you? Because and then if they're like, yeah, it was kind of sad because my grandma died. Wow. Then I haven't been like, oh, cool, Orlando.
Wow, the weather there.
Did you go to Disney? Right? But instead being like, I try not to make any assumptions about what somebody is telling me until I check in with them about what the experience was like for them.
Fascinating and incredibly helpful, Sam.
Right?
Yeah.
It's prevented me from saying a lot of shitty things. You know what I mean? Like putting my foot in my mouth.
Oh my God, funny.
Of like, oh yeah. Where somebody's like, I'm pregnant. And you're like, congratulations.
Yes,
and they're like, oh, actually, no.
It's so funny that you said that because
that.
in the back of my mind, pregnancy is the first thing that I thought of because I was taught very young by somebody and this is wrong, but I was taught like the right response to pregnancy announcements at all times is congratulations and then like a follow-up.
Yep.
And only recently in my life have I been like unpacking that conditioning of like how, you know, backwards that is.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't employ it, just so you know, but somebody told me that and I kept that tiny piece of knowledge in my brain.
Yeah. Or even like, you know, oh, I went on vacation with my family. Oh, how was that? And then they can be like, it was great. I love my family. Or they can be like, it was really hard.
Challenging.
Right?
Yeah,
and then you can figure out how you want to respond based on what they're actually feeling as opposed to what our patterns around this shit would help us
My favorite thing you've shared in a long time. That's great. All right, my darling. Scared friend, we hope you feel a little bit less scared. Or how about this? If you're still scared, know that it's okay to feel this way. We're with you with this. And also take a deep breath and let those feelings flow through you if you can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for writing.
We love you.
All right. Our next letter comes from Looking for Answers, whose pronouns are she, her, and who is writing from Healthy Hurts Too. Hi, Sam and Sierra. So glad I found your podcast. I appreciate your healthy approach to relationships as a hopeful therapist myself.
Aww.
I'm currently struggling to navigate a healthy breakup. What I mean is my ex and I had a very loving and supportive partnership. He always gave me a safe place to speak my needs and even worked to try to become a better partner in the ways that I asked him. I showed up for him in the same way. Ultimately, we broke up because he told me that while I was the most loving, respectful, and supportive relationship he's ever had, he couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't his person. Of course, this was devastating to hear because, spoiler, I thought he was my person. Mm-hmm. Even through the pain, I thanked him for his honesty, and we both had a really beautiful breakup, thanking each other for the ways that we've made each other's lives better. But now I am on the journey of decoupling him from my life and the life that I thought we'd have together. Instagram, of course, figured out that I'm going through a breakup, likely because we both blocked each other for healing purposes, and has been sending me targeted posts with seemingly helpful post-breakup words of encouragement. What I am finding, though, is that most of the posts and even the advice from my friends is not helpful. It's not helpful because it's not applicable to my breakup. Most of the posts I see are reminding me to wait for a consistent lover, one who sees my value and wants to know me. But the problem is I already had that. So how do I heal from a relationship that society is telling me to wait for? Because all these quotes just remind me of how emotionally available and supportive he was, that does not feel conducive to my healing process. I try to remind myself to be thankful that life sent me such a gentle lover, but now I'm just bitter that I don't have it anymore. I'm bitter that I, again, have to weed through worse men before I find even one that might come close. I know it's possible. I found it once, and I can certainly do it again. I also refuse to believe that I am living in a world that won't give me a great partner. #manifest. But it's really lonely here, and there aren't too many resources for me to lean on that can understand my experience. Especially my friends and what feels like society at large have not encountered the nuanced loss of a healthy lover. I'd be appreciative to hear your thoughts on this one. Much love.
All right, my darling, thanks so much for writing and for trusting us with this letter. I think I want to start by saying I relate to the isolating instinct that, or the isolating assessment that we don't have a lot of representation of good love ending. Do you know what I mean? Like we have explosive love, we have unhealthy love, we have unrequited love, but this terrible ache of a good love that isn't the right love, and how to mourn that type of breakup. I agree that there's not a ton of, again, representation about this.
Right.
And I would argue that that's why probably people stay in these quote unquote good relationships for a long time, even if they're not the great, nutritious, right relationships, you know, because people will say like, oh, well, it's good, I guess, you know. And also, I want to, just because the representation isn't there doesn't mean you are alone in this experience. I know that that is not necessarily soothing completely to this feeling of isolation and heartbreak. But if you could take my words and hold them and trust them and know, like, even though I can't see it, I'm not alone. And even though there are not like stories or words that I can rely on, my experience is real and shared by others. And it is a real, it's such a deep pain to uncouple, decouple, especially from somebody who you love and respect still, you know, and who you saw as your person. I even really respect the way you said that. Like, he loved me and felt like I wasn't his person, and I still thought he was my person. And so that, like, it's just such a heavy dissonance there.
For sure.
And I'm sorry you're carrying that.
Yeah, and I think that the part of this letter that sort of most triggered empathy for me, because it felt so familiar, was that piece around things were good, and now I know that I have to go back into the world to do a shit ton of work to even get back to this goodness that I have.
God, totally.
Right? Like, and that is really, that's a really hard and challenging place to be. And I remember when my dad died, one of the first things that I talked to Sierra about was like, I don't want to have to do the work to get to a place where I am healed from this, right? And it happened again, even recently, when I decided, when my therapist offered to me to do this PTSD work around the experience of my dad's death, right? We'd been talking about it. We'd been talking about it, about sort of the idea that like this experience hasn't been really well integrated for me, that it was still something that was causing me a lot of physiological reaction. And I remember he said, there's this therapy that I want to try with you, and I think it would be really helpful for you. And I cried for 10 minutes straight, just like sobbing and weeping, because I knew that it was going to take a shit ton of work. And it felt so demoralizing that I had to do it, right? Like just the idea of like, oh, fuck, I didn't choose this. Things before this were so good, right? Like things before this were what I thought my life was going to be. And now I have no choice but to do this thing. And that's not actually true, right? I had the choice, and I think you have the choice too. You don't have to put yourself back out there. You don't have to go through this aspect of dating. It is something that you can choose to not do, right? And you know that you have a goal. You know that you want somebody in your life to help support you. And so you are making an active choice to decide to work on this journey for yourself. And are those choices the choices that you would have necessarily wanted? Absolutely not. And you are sitting in this moment with power available to you, with the ability to choose available to you. And I invite you to sort of sit in that recognition and say, yep, I don't want to be here, and here are the choices that I can make for myself. And I get to choose to do this hard thing because I am working towards something that I think will be helpful for me.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because you saying I didn't choose this, I didn't want this. Things were so good before. It just echoes the sentiment in the letter writer of those lived experiences that come to us without consent, come to us without warning, that make us feel ill, that we are ill prepared for because we couldn't have been prepared because we didn't ask for this.
And there's no way to be prepared for something like this to happen.
Totally.
Right?
and what you said of things were so good before. I want to highlight for a second too, because I think something our brains do is we romanticize the safety and security we felt before the shit went down.
Yep.
And I think that in the letter writer, it's manifesting in oh my God, I'm never going to find somebody who is as good as this person. I'm never going to return to that sense of safety again.
Right.
And guess what? You will never be the same person again. So I don't want to say just plainly, you are going to find a great and maybe better and a better love, right?
Sure.
Which I do believe. I do think that's true. And also, you are going to be changed by this.
Yep.
As much as you didn't ask for this, or as much as you wish that you could just erase this part of your history, or, as much as you wish things were different, you will be changed by this the way that we are changed by all great life challenges, specifically one that we didn't ask for, or we wouldn't have called upon for any reason, Yep. And I know this is a very intense way to talk about a breakup, but it's, it's sort of one of those lived experiences that shuffles around your understanding of security and safety, right? Yep. And we are always altered from those shuffling.
For sure.
I think after your dad died for a year, our refrain was the universe is going to devastate us, because you and I found comfort in saying
yep,
we're not safe. That security that we thought we had, it's not there. And so I don't mean this in an overly romanticized way either. That sort of ideology actually makes me love life more. It makes me love connection more. It makes me more present. There's a pendulum swing where that ideology could make me more anxious. And this is what I want to say to the letter writer, is that I'm not saying that all is lost and that you're going to be scarred forever from this relationship.
No.
I'm not saying that you're never going to find somebody that adds up to your boyfriend. And so the despair, be anxious, always be thinking about the past and how wonderful it was before then. I'm saying, you're not going to meet someone like your boyfriend. You're going to meet somebody who's different, who shows up differently in your life because you are going to be different, because your life is going to be different. And I'm not going to say it's going to be better, not because this is going to be your one great love of your life, but because I don't think it's helpful to necessarily put our relationships in a hierarchy when we are different people in each relationship.
For sure.
I can objectively say this was the worst relationship of my life, or that's the worst partner, or I was the worst in there. And also, I was a different person in every relationship with different people. So everything is just going to be different. So maybe, honestly, this listener is probably at home this is not fucking comforting, Sierra. But
I find it very comforting.
Something that's comforting for me is just all right, taking a deep breath and being like, I am going to be changed by this. And I can mourn that. I can mourn the person I was before this change. And and in that grief, I can also find a way to let go of who I thought I was going to be.
For sure.
Or else be dragged down by it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like we really view our lives, or many of us really view our lives as being sort of like we are on a set trajectory, and then things either like bump us off that trajectory or damage us so much that we like can't keep moving on that trajectory or whatever it is. But what I am trying to embrace more often is that there is no trajectory to my life, right? I am, in fact, continuing to shift and adapt and change because of the experiences that I have been in, but I'm not sort of like being moved off the path or like beaten to the path where I'm not like moving fast enough, but instead I am existing wholly in this moment always. And there is no set path forward.
There's no path.
And there's no set path backwards that I've come from that has been like damaged in some way by the things that have happened to me, right? Like all I have is who I am in this moment and the things that I have now not even carrying, but the things that are now part of me as I begin to understand the things around me in different lights and in different perspectives and choose to decide which direction to go. Knowing that there's no path, there's just choices that I make about which, like walking through the woods, like which tree do I want to like go around next?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Not a path, there's trees.
Yes, absolutely. And the forest like doesn't end, right? Like it's not like I suddenly am trying to get out of the forest into like the bright light, right? Like my job is just to be in that forest and enjoy the light through the trees and see the critters walking around and smell what the pine needles, and like that's the job for me, not to try and figure out a way out of the forest, because there's nothing outside of the forest. This is just the life that we have, and and how beautiful it is to not have to worry about the destination, but instead just be like, what am I working on today? What am I seeing? What am I noticing in this moment, when in this place of the forest that I'm currently in?
That's so beautiful. And it's all to say, like, online dating sucks.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. Like that was like super like existential hippie dude.
Honestly, it was some of my favorite things we've talked on the podcast in a long time. So I'm just making a joke about how we go so deep. And
absolutely.
And they're like, I just didn't want to date right now.
Oh, 100%. No, dating fucking sucks, right? Like that is like a rotted like corpse of a tree that we have to like touch sometimes, you know?
Yeah. 2018 Just Break Up would be like, oh my God, yeah, get on Tinder.
Yeah.
And 2022 Just Break Up is like, you're in the woods.
Yeah.
You're looking at a fucking tree.
It's honestly, I've just done so much more therapy than I did before this podcast started.
Oh my God. Can you? I literally have healed so many wounds because of these wounds.
Wounds, here we are. We're all just wounds in the forest, you know?
I want to start saying wounds the way we say youths. Wounds. Anyway, yeah, so breaking up sucks.
Breaking up fucking sucks. Online dating fucking sucks.
The woods suck.
Yeah.
Because you're like, where's the path? It's just trees.
Exactly. There's a bear, right? Like you're out of food.
You have to camp.
Yeah. Oh, disgusting.
Meanwhile, I'm like, I'm going to lose my virginity here.
That's absolutely right.
And it's
100% right.
There's like 80 throwbacks in there if you didn't get it. Anyway, I hope that this rambling, poetic musing was helpful for you. You're in the thick of it now. You're gonna be in a different thick of it later. Like it will feel differently, because you're gonna be different, and it's okay to make space for that grief, to grieve the life that you had, that you thought you had. You know, my therapist has been asking. You know, at the end of our sessions, she'll be like, so we brought up a lot of stuff today. Like, you know, how are you going to nurture what feels exposed after this session? Like we exposed it. So what are you going to do now that makes that exposed part of you feel loved and nurtured? And I'm always like, you know, like
rub some salt in it. I don't know.
Like, I don't know, just like disassociate and keep going about my day, because that's literally what I do. But I'll extend that to you. You know, what can you do to nurture this grief and this new tender person that's underneath this hard life experience? We love you.
Thank you so much for writing.
We hope this helps.
All right, everyone. This brings us to the blind date segment of our episode. This is when we try and set you up with something that we think you're really going to like. And this week, we want to send you home with...
All right, y'all. It's an app.
Great.
Yeah. I'm trying not to like recommend TV shows.
Sure.
Anymore, because that's like all I did all summer. And I also like recommend them always really late. Like if you haven't seen A League of Their Own, the remake, definitely go watch that. But it's like been out, so I didn't want to recommend it. But so the app that I am into right now, or that I'm using in my life in this season of my life, is Timeshell. So it's funny, we talked about social media earlier today. I want to print photos of my baby for a baby book, or just like of my life. I love having real physical photos, especially because like when my daughter grows up, like what if all of her baby pictures are digital and she wants to like frame pictures of us or her, or like have access to them? You know, it just has changed the landscape. And like when she was born, I was able to take out my old photos and compare my baby pictures to her and stuff like that. And I want to give her that opportunity as well. So I looked into some photo printing, or actually my sister recommended this to me. Timeshell with one L at the end of it. And basically it's an app that every month you can choose to have 10 or 30 photos printed once a month. And so like I do 10 photos a month, and it like, it's super easy to use, and it prompts you to select those 10 photos as the month is coming to a close, and then it'll ship it to you. Cool. And so it's an easy way for me. I'm going to take like 3,000 photos a month, so it's kind of hard to pick a top 10. But then then at the end of the year, I'm going to have a handful of photos that I can put in a book that like, show me her first year of life. And, it's actually, I really like it because it's like not a subscription. It's not going to charge you. If you don't, like, you can skip months pretty easily. Cool. Anyway, and it's pretty affordable, and it comes in these really cute packaging, small, limited packaging. I just really like it. And it's an easy way for me, somebody who has like 4 brain cells right now, to remember it. Timeshell, get your photos printed.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I love that. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. You can like us on Facebook, and you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the things at Just Break Up Pod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review, and consider supporting us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
They've been fire lately.
Yeah, they've been a lot of fun recently. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need 2 random strangers, giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, producing, all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his most recent podcast. Dang, that's weird.
Ooh, I like the inflection on that one. That's a new way to say it.
Yeah. And remember, you are whole even as you are becoming. You are whole even as you are changing, even as your life starts to look differently than you had planned, even as you are excavating parts of yourself that feel broken or feel underdeveloped or feel unhealed. You are still whole. You are still a whole, worthy human being in the middle of that forest. We are all just working on becoming. And if all else fails,
just break up.